Can a team give up an entire full season just for the promise of future dominance? What if I told you that Ferrari is doing just that, staking its reputation, its resources, and the prestige of Maranello on a single card called 2026? Because after the FIA's extreme changes, Ferrari not only changed its strategy, it changed its DNA. Will this be his redemption or the final nail in the coffin? Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Everything changed with a signature from the FIA. The technical rules for 2026 are not a simple adjustment. They are a total redesign of modern Formula One, a turning point comparable only to the hybrid change of 2014. This time, the cars will be shorter, narrower, lighter in aerodynamic mass, but much more complex in energy management. And the most radical, a 50-50 balance between the internal combustion engine and the hybrid system, with almost triple the electric power than in the current era. In figures, this means that the cars will go from using around 160 electric horses to more than 470. A change that transforms the total approach to car design. Is no longer enough to have a powerful engine. Performance is now defined by battery efficiency, braking regeneration, electrical architecture, and the software that orchestrates it all. And if you fail in even one of those areas, you're out of the game. Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, everyone knows it. But only one has dared to change everything: Ferrari. In Maranello, there were no half measures. Faced with the obvious inferiority of the SF25 compared to McLaren, a car that surpasses them in fast cornering, braking stability, and aerodynamic consistency, the team decided to cut corners. In an unprecedented move in its recent history, Ferrari abandoned the development of the 2025 car in the middle of spring, releasing the wind tunnel and CFD simulations to pour everything into the 678 project, the car of the new era. To be clear, while Red Bull was still looking for front-wing upgrades and Mercedes was trying to polish its camouflaged active suspensions, Ferrari was already assembling structural prototypes of the 2026 car. It was not an act of resignation. It was a declaration of war. Frédéric Vasseur made it clear internally: we are not going to win this battle, but we can win the next war. And for that we need time. Time we won't have if we continue spending it on a dead car. Starting in May, everything in Maranello revolves around 2026. Every engineer, every tunnel test, every suspension model, every gearbox iteration, everything is thought about with a single question: will this work in the new regulations? The SF25 became a mobile test bench, and any update visible on the runway since then has been simply residual, mandatory by regulations, or useful to verify collateral aspects of the future design. But if anything has given Ferrari a break on this technical climb, it's something as cold as a spreadsheet. His fourth place in the 2024 Constructors' World Championship, a sporting failure, has been transformed into an unexpected regulatory advantage. Thanks to the progressive aerodynamic timescale system, Ferrari has approximately 15% more tunnel and CFD simulation time than McLaren during the first development cycle 2026. It is a real difference. In an era where you can no longer freely invest in track testing, that extra time in the tunnel is worth more than gold. Is pure development, accelerated iteration, millimeters of difference that can become tenths, and then victories. This technical benefit, however, is temporary. It will decrease as the new cycle progresses. And that is why Ferrari has put all its effort into exploiting this unique window to the fullest. The strategy is clear: burn stages before anyone else. Validate concepts before Red Bull even releases its first official simulation hours for the new car. Reach March 2026 not only with a complete car, but with a validated, polished, and optimized system to explode from the first lap. Vasseur's internal discourse has been direct: we are building an advantage that we cannot waste. Every day counts. Every iteration matters. Because if we arrive earlier, we iterate more. And if we iterate more, we win. However, none of this takes away the weight your engineers carry. Loic Serra, the technical brain behind the chassis, knows that his legacy within Ferrari will not be remembered for what the SF25 does. Everything will depend on the 678. Every line of the diffuser, every angle of the suspension, every calibration of the internal airflow of the side pod will be judged by the results of the new regulation. The pressure at this moment is not on the track. It's in the offices, in the tunnels, on the simulation screens. Because Ferrari not only wants to arrive prepared for 2026, it needs to arrive dominating, because there is no room for another failure. There is no room for second chances. This is a window, a unique one. And as has become clear in the history of Formula One, whoever takes advantage of the regulatory vacuum first can write the history of an entire era. Within the walls of Maranello, what is underway with the 678 car is not just a development. It is a millimetric engineering operation that has already begun to produce signs of optimism in key areas. And although Ferrari has tried hard to keep many of the developments secret, there is data, technical leaks, and structural changes that reveal a much more powerful narrative than it appears from the outside. Unlike what many teams are doing, Ferrari is not just designing loose parts. It is building a comprehensive concept already tested on structural benches, which has successfully passed the FIA crash tests, including those of the survival cell, the gearbox, and the side supports. These are not simple procedures. Each of these elements represents weeks of validation, deformation calculations, impact resistance tests, thermal simulations, and aerodynamic stress. Approving them this early implies that the chassis and internal architecture of the 678 are not mock-ups. They are already a final product in technical evaluation, ready to evolve. This early validation has unleashed something rare at Ferrari: free time. Time not to rest, but to focus on the refinement of secondary areas that in many cases other teams have not yet begun to address. Aerodynamics, for example, no longer works on speculative forms. It is already iterating on consolidated geometries. This means that while McLaren and Red Bull are still committing wind tunnels between their 2025 car and the first models of the new regulations, Ferrari can dedicate 100% of its simulation capacity to a single platform. There is no noise in your data. Everything is aligned in one direction. One of the most promising points is in the front suspension. According to internal reports, Ferrari would have reconfigured the geometry of its control arms and modified the pushrod anchor point to improve the mechanical connection between the front wheels and the steering response under lateral load. This, together with the new cooling packaging that has been optimized for weight and internal flow, allows for a more compact and aerodynamically efficient design. Less frontal volume, less air interference, more freedom in the shape of the flow channels towards a flat bottom. And it is here that a key clue about Ferrari's intentions emerges: the volume of the gearbox. According to internal leaks, the 678 will have a narrower and lower rear casing, which frees up space for a more aggressive diffuser, similar to the concepts that Aston Martin and Mercedes tested in isolation in 2023, but were never able to consolidate due to lack of time. Ferrari, having had the platform frozen since July, has been able to integrate this architecture from the original design. This is not evolution. It is designed from scratch with a foundation that others will only be able to try to imitate a year later. But the real core of optimism in Maranello is not in the suspension, nor in the aerodynamics. It is in something deeper, in the silence, in the absence of negative rumors, in the lack of force corrections, where the internal workflow has not been interrupted by changes in management, technical crises, or lack of validation. Everything is progressing step by step within the planned schedule. In the paddock, rivals have noticed it. Ferrari's calm, after years of strategic chaos, is disturbing. Because when a team doesn't need to talk, it's because it's letting its data speak for it. At this point, the 678 car is not a promise. It is an evolving reality. A platform that has already overcome structural barriers and is now being molded to hit the track not with doubts, but with confidence. And in Formula One, confidently arriving ahead of everyone else can make the difference between chasing or being chased. Every big bet has a cost. And in the case of Ferrari, that cost is not only paid in lost points or missed podiums. It pays in internal tension, in personnel burnout, in emotional uncertainty, and in a silent fracture between what is expected and what can really be delivered. In Maranello, the atmosphere is denser than ever. The decision to focus everything on 2026 was not unanimous. Within the team, especially among runway engineers and those responsible for development in SF25 areas, there was resistance. Some saw it as an early surrender, others as a betrayal of the present. For weeks, technical discussions and planning meetings were marked by an unspoken question: what happens if the 2026 car doesn't work? Because that's what no one at Ferrari dares to formulate out loud. If 678 does not comply, there is no network. There is no plan B. There are no last-minute signings to compensate. The team will have lost 2 seasons of results in exchange for a future promise that never materialized, and that can dynamite the structure from within. The pressure on Loic Serra, in charge of chassis design, is immense. You are not just developing a new car. He is reforming Ferrari's technical language from the ground up. And every decision you make, from the torsional rigidity of the monocoque to rear weight distribution, will be judged without leniency if the car fails. There are no excuses. There is no previous legacy to blame. And then there is Zimmermann's shadow. His departure left a gap that was difficult to fill. Although Ferrari has signed talent with experience in hybrid systems, it is not yet clear if this new group of people will function as a cohesive unit. The power unit department is operating under maximum pressure, knowing that in 2026 energy recovery, cooling of the hybrid package and integration with power delivery software will be more decisive than ever, and that any error, any glitch, will be paid for with an entire ruined season. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.